Hey, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of Hanging Out with Nolan Hong. And joining us this week on the podcast is the CEO of Kupu, which is an organization here in Hawaii that provides hands-on training in conservation, sustainability, and environmental education for young adults with the goal of fostering our new generation of environmental and cultural stewards. And aside from doing that, he is just well known and respected here in our community as far as someone who's just contributed so much to our culture and our community. And we are kind of bonded by, family ties, loosely related in some ways. And I'm just really excited to have him on here and talk story with him. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast, Mr. John Leong. John, what's going on, man?
Hey, Nolan, good to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
John, I am stoked to have this time to chat with you. I know you've been super busy. We've been kind of planning this for a couple months, and I'm just really honored that you have squared away some time for us to hang out here today.
Absolutely. Well, I've been looking forward to this too, and it's always great to connect with you. So thanks for having me.
So before I go into, what you do now and with Kupu, I wanted to kind of go a little bit further back, which is we kind of quasi know each other because of, your relatives and my relatives. And there's a nice little family connection there. But I actually knew of you before we, knew that we were connected that way. And that is in high school, you were like one of the star football athletes on the football team. And I was a young freshman, and, I looked up to you as like a superstar for our football team, and just wanted to, get to know a little bit more about, what your memories and I know you're going to be very humble and say, I just played a few years, but what was high school like for you as someone from my perspective, looking up to someone like you that had it all made and was like the star football player and stuff and super popular and smart. What was your experience and perspective of how high school was like for you?
Oh, thanks for having such a glorified view of my as you said, I mean, it was, it's always, the grass is always greener probably, I guess. But I feel very blessed, and I think that we all have opportunities to face challenges in life, and your outlook on it really will determine the outcomes in life too. But I do feel very grateful. I got to go to a wonderful school like Kupu Hawaiʻi, and I kind of actually, for myself, even though I did play football and sports, I did track as well and a little bit of wrestling. I never really followed into one clique in high school. I was kind of making my own path, and I would actually oftentimes be by myself. I'd hang out at Montague and do my homework and hang out with the music teachers over there, and just and then kind of hang out with different friends in different groups, from orchestra to sports to science and different folks. So I kind of really tried to be friends with everyone. I never really found myself wanting to be in one type of grouping of folks, and really enjoyed the diversity of people that the school had to offer.
Yeah, that's what really stood out to me because, as someone, who kind of observed, there were a nice healthy amount of cliques in our school, as every school. But when you look at someone like yourself, who was, a very prominent athlete in our school, usually one would assume like, oh yeah, you're part of the jocks, the popular cool kids that, run the school. But you're right. When I would see you and observe you around campus, I wouldn't see you in those particular sects of students. It was, you were always walking around or studying. And I just always, I never, of course you're in, classes, above me, but I would just always see you as someone who's like very accomplished as a student, very studious and such. Was that something that was that you've always, was kind of the norm for you as a student growing up? Like education was something that you gravitated towards?
I think one of the, being at school like Kupu Hawaiʻi, you definitely feel a sense of gratitude. And I mean, it's easy to go into the side of feeling privileged too, but I think one of the things I'm grateful for my family for was that they always tried to teach and instill in me a value of, of money, of the hard work that went to get us there. And so I think because of that, it gave me a chance to really appreciate where I was. And I wanted to use the most of it. I mean, not to say I didn't have my shortcomings and those challenges, those as growing up as a teen here, but I think that was one of the things I felt very blessed by. And similar to you, my grandfather was a restaurateur.
Oh, wow.
And so we had the Wailana Coffee House.
No way. Wow. What a iconic restaurant here.
Yeah. So we were very fortunate, and I loved growing up, going there, after schools at times or on the weekends. And I remember even during the parades, my dad would always encourage me to be an entrepreneur, and they would he had me fill up sodas, and then during the parades walk around as like a 8-year-old or what, I can't remember how old I was, but 8, 9 years old, I'd go out there and offer drinks to people for a fee, and standing in the hot sun on Ala Moana Boulevard. But in addition to the entrepreneurial skills, I think one of the things that I really appreciated was watching my gungong, or my grandfather, and my popo, and how they operated their business. They were always very conscientious of their customers and building a community there, and working hard, but then also taking care of their employees too. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when my gungong passed away, a lot of people said, he was all so kind to us. I got my first start at the Wailana as a busboy, and now I'm a chef at this place. And I got the chance to get promoted, from being a waitress to becoming a manager. And that was just the type of way that they ran it. It's kind of like Cheers, where people knew each other, they took care of each other, and even when they made a profit, they, to me, there was never a stigma that profit was negative. Maybe it's because we're Chinese, but but it was not a negative kind of thing. Yeah. Sometimes it's thought of today, but really, I think profit allowed them to do things where it employed people, yes, on one end, but the other thing was they could be generous on other sides to the family, to others. Yeah. And in fact, when my gungong passed away, my popo found all these IOUs in the safe of money he had let people borrow, and just said, "Oh, pay me back when you have time." Oh, wow. And so I think that, to me, growing up with that type of family and that type of background, it made me appreciate the hard work that went in to get there. Yeah. And to allow me to do what I'm doing. And so that kind of was one of the things when I was, I remember being as a student, was like, I want to take advantage of this, and I want to make it, make use of it. And it's easy as a teen, if there's any teens listening now, it's easy as a teen to fall into the trap that we just want to fit in. Mm-hmm. And I know we all face that pressure, and it doesn't go away necessarily in life either. But I think that at the same time too, there's also a path that's uniquely crafted for each of us. And if we understand that, and we're willing to work towards it, and not sacrifice in order to be able to be liked, then when we find that authentic purpose and path, then that's when we start to unlock our potential.
Wow, that's so neat. And I can't help but think that you are the son that my mom would have wanted, because I just had a conversation with her a few weeks ago where she was like telling me how I needed to have the perspective that you just described, as far as like, you have to be proud that you went to Punahou, and take pride in that, because so many people in our family sacrifice for it and stuff and all that stuff. And I didn't do very well in the school. I didn't fit in as far as, academics or anything. And if she hears this, she's going to be like, "Oh, John, you are what I wanted Nolan to be." So thanks, John.
Yeah, you're welcome. I know that this will never get aired now, so we may as well talk about anything else. No, I'm sure that there's a lot of proud moments that she's had with you, and I know that you're also being very humble about things, but thank you. I feel better about myself for this afternoon.
Yeah, if your parents ever have anything negative to say about you, just make, well, Nolan's mom thinks that I am the salt of the earth. So,
Thank you.
so did you
It's
have,
probably now more my kids.
oh,
It's like being talking about fitting in. It's like, they definitely don't feel like the cool dad, and it's like, so it's definitely a uphill battle to be wanted by your teenage kids.
you have, so that's right. You do have, your daughter's a teenager, right?
Yeah, I have two girls. One's on the verge this week on the 11th. She becomes a teenager. She'll be 13, and then my older daughter is 15.
So I know you're saying like, you're not cool to them and whatnot, but I would think that of all parents, you would be in the best position to be one of the cool parents. So have you
I don't
experienced
know.
any kind of like success in this area? Like even just a tiny bit? Like, is there anything that other fathers can go, oh, let me try that. Like, do you have any advice on how to be cool to your teenage daughters? Anything that's worked for you?
I, you know, I've decided I've tried different things. I've tried to TikTok with them. I've tried to, do different things. I mean, they thought it was cool. I created an Instagram account so I could watch how some of our work is progressing on Instagram.
Yeah.
And they thought it was so cool that I had Instagram. And I was like, Dad, you have Instagram? Wow. We thought you were the Facebook era. And so, but I think even that I've decided that it's probably, if it happens serendipitously, then that's awesome. But at the same time, it's like, I just trying to be a good friend to them and a dad at the same time, and
Yeah.
trying to do that without failing too miserably either. So,
What has been kind of like the more either surprising or confusing things that your teenage children have brought into the house where you're like, how is that a thing? Because every generation goes through that, right? Where it's like, why is this popular, or why do you think this is cool? Has there been something where a trend that you are just so perplexed by by your daughters?
well, the one that came to the top of my head was not when they were teens, but when one of my daughters was, in elementary school. She liked these things called Shopkins, and
Yeah.
it's like you buy this box full of like, plastic that's like about an inch in size or less, and they're all these cute little things, and it costs like $35 for a box of 25 pieces of plastic. And so I was like, how good is their marketing that they can get kids to really want us? So, and then I'm buying it too. It's like, oh my goodness. That was something that perplexed both, that I bought it and that she liked it. So I don't know which one was more. What's interesting to me that I found, and I don't know if this is the case for all families, but my oldest daughter, I have 4 kids, and I've been wanting her to drive.
Mm.
And I know that sounds odd, but I want her to drive because it's so difficult now getting everyone everywhere.
Yeah.
And so she does not want to drive.
Really?
I'm like, let's go for a driver's, training. And
Yeah.
she has her permit, and she doesn't want to do it. And I think it's because she's overheard Mom and I talk about how she could be great to help us drop the kids off and take them to school in the morning.
Oh no.
Like, I get chauffeured, and why would I want that?
Oh, what a
But
mistake.
my second daughter really wants to drive, and so she's 12, going on 13. So that's kind of been a funny thing as well too.
Maybe you have to address that possible concern with your older daughter and say, hey, let's make a deal. You get your driver's license, and we will only ask you once a month to to chauffeur, but at least you just drive yourself somewhere, so we don't have to take you somewhere.
Right. But I have to say, she's super, what I appreciate her, she's very responsible. And I think she sees that pressure that, comes on parents as we were driving and taking people around. And so she's been really good about wanting to find like friends or other things to help her get to places as well.
That's nice.
Which is, really, feel very blessed to have her as the oldest, and all the kids, of course. But as the oldest daughter, she's really such a neat girl. I'm also shocked in a good way by just like that character that she has, and just the initiative she's taken on. So like you and I have been talking, we've moved recently, and one of the things that I was really shocked by and grateful for was that she created a responsibility chart for all the other kids and her to help out around the house now that we've moved in.
Wow.
And it's like most 15-year-old kids are adding to the responsibilities of their families.
Yeah,
So
right.
I was I was really, I mean, I know that there's a lot of like head scratching things that happen as a parent, but
Right.
I mean, this one was a positive one where it's like, wow, so good that she was that responsible too.
What
So.
did you discover that there was something she wanted out of that? Like what were you like, so what do you want?
Yeah, right. So what's the
Yeah.
ulterior motive here
Yeah.
that is driving this decision? I don't know, but she is a very compassionate child,
Mm.
although she has tried to mask it with a lot of sarcasm in years of late. Um, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of genuineness to it, but I do think she is trying to show her responsibility as well because she really wants a dog. And
Mm.
that's been something that she's wanted since she was little. I found out that we went to Alaska in 2008 or 9, and we rented a RV camper van. And when she was an only child, when she was just about 2 or 3, and she told me this recently that one of the formative memories that she has is she still remembers going out to one of the sites and seeing the huskies that do the sled
Mm-hmm.
pulling, the Iditarod type of races, and she just thought they were so cool. And since then, she's always wanted a husky, and so yeah. So I guess
Wow.
if we get one, she'll end up having to show her responsibility by cleaning up all the fur that comes from
Oh
the
yeah.
house.
That's that's gonna be a full-time job in itself, man. Like they're
Yeah,
beautiful
yeah, for
dogs,
sure.
but my goodness, the shedding
Yeah.
is insane. They're
Oh yeah,
huge.
yeah,
Maybe you can get they have the mini huskies. So maybe,
yeah.
yeah,
Like those Popskis, I heard.
yeah,
Yeah, that might be an alternative. So
yeah.
yeah.
Now, so you have 4 children. Did you always want to have a large family? Did you come from a large family? Do you have a lot of siblings yourself?
So yes and no. So I don't have a lot of siblings. I'm the only child, but my
Oh,
my dad was one of 8, and he had a
oh,
blended family.
wow.
So yeah, he was. So I grew up with a lot of cousins.
Holy smokes.
16, yeah, there's 18 now. First cousins on his side of the family.
Wow.
Um, and then my wife is actually from a big family. She's from Rapa Nui, Easter Island.
Oh,
And so her dad is one of 13
oh my
kids,
gosh.
and she has 50 first cousins. So she makes my
Oh,
family
wow.
small.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, there's
Wow.
only a few thousand people in Rapa Nui. She's probably related to all of the
Yeah.
ones that were born there. But
How did you,
um,
did she move to Hawaii? Like, how did you guys meet then?
yeah, she didn't want to marry her cousin, so she came to Hawaii. No, that's partially true, probably. But
I was gonna say that's probably some truth to that.
yeah, because I mean, even in Hawaii, I mean, if somehow, if I married one of your sisters or others, we would have
Yeah,
found out we're related. It's like,
yeah.
oh,
Anybody Chinese has any Chinese blood, you're probably related somehow, right?
yeah. um, but yeah, her dad actually was the governor and also the first native Rapa Nui archaeologist. And
Wow.
they're known for their big stone statues.
Yeah.
They're the moai. And so he did both things as in his career. And small island, everyone wears a lot of different hats career-wise. And so he was an archaeologist and the governor. And then he ended up moving here to Hawaii with his wife, who's my mother-in-law is from Texas and Colorado.
Whoa. I didn't see that one.
No, no. So yeah, she went there on an exchange, and when she was 16, and then he actually went up. He was kind of brought under the wing of an archaeologist from Wyoming who was doing work in Rapa Nui when my father-in-law was a teen, and so he actually was brought in and got to go to college in Laramie, Wyoming, and he re-met my mother-in-law, and they got married, and they went to grad school here at UH.
Wow.
So so they ended up wanting to bring their family back here, and so when he finished his term as governor, they came back when Juliana was about 12, and they were first in Laie and Ha'ula, and she went to Laie Elementary, and then when she became a sophomore, she came to Punahou. And so we met in Cook Library in one of the bays, and it was a interesting story because my best man at our wedding, one of my best friends, Jimmy Bennett, was sitting next to me, and he was the popular quarterback,
Yep.
and all the girls were around him, and someone had wanted to introduce Juliana to him, but fortunate for me, Jimmy was preoccupied, and so Juliana and I started talking, and we just kind of hit it off. And then I remember that night walking out of the locker room, Jimmy's like, "Look, I saw how you were talking with Juliana. If you talk with her again, our friendship is over."
What?
He was totally joking, but well, I think he was joking, but I guess
we're gonna have to ask and fact check that.
But we're still best friends, and he's always been very kind to me in life. So we've and Juliana and I guess as it's written, the rest is history.
Do you remember who made the first move then, like to actual dating versus just meeting and becoming friends?
Oh yeah, so she was a very hard catch, and she'll tell me she doesn't play hard to get, she just is hard to get. And so so definitely I felt there was a lot of intentions that she liked me, and so I was like, well, I'm a dumb teen boy that probably doesn't know girls very well, so maybe I'm reading this wrong, but there was that feeling, oh, I think she likes me, and so I remember like asking her to a couple of different things. Now you'll have to get her on your podcast to get her side of the story, but I have this podcast time, so I can tell my side of the story.
This is the true version for now.
Right, exactly. As it is written, if I had a Bible here, I could swear on it. So Juliana, I asked her out a few times, and the first time I think I asked her out, it took a lot of courage for me to do this, and I was like, oh, I'll just do it, and she's the first girl I ever dated too. So
wow,
just to kind of put it in perspective.
Was she also the first that you ever asked out?
I think so, probably, yeah. I think. Well, I had gone out to dances with some of the girls, like junior function and things like that.
Yeah,
not like thinking of them as my girlfriend.
Right.
Hoping that they'd be my girlfriend one day. So I asked her out and to a movie, and then the day I was supposed to pick her up, I get a call back, and I remember I was standing on the lanai of our house. I got a call back, and she said, "Oh, John, I'm so sorry. It was my birthday last night. I had a sleepover, and we're all really tired." And I was like, "Oh," my heart was, a little crushed right then. I was like, "Oh." So I felt maybe she's just making an excuse. She just, she had second thoughts. And so I remember then building up the courage like a month or two later, and I had to go to this recital, a Christmas recital for her music class. So I invited her, and then she called me back and said, "Oh, my dad's in town. Do you mind if they come too?" And I'm like, "Oh, well." And then they ended up getting busy family commitments, and I didn't realize that her dad, he had moved back to Rapa Nui and was working from afar and coming back every now and again. So I didn't realize that part at the time. But at that time, I was like, "Oh, okay." So we ended up not connecting those two times, and so that was my senior year, and I kind of lost my nerve after that for a little bit.
Yeah.
But it actually worked out really good. We kept in touch. I went off to college, and then came back, and I would write to her on emails and send her notes, the traditional way, the old way of handwritten notes. And
Mm-hmm.
I sent her like a letter with my first fall leaf that I had ever seen, a maple leaf, and and her friends told her that I was interested in her, because guys don't usually send maple leaves to girls unless they're interested.
Yeah.
So I'm glad her friends shared that. But yeah, so then it wasn't until later on, in when she graduated, that I went to her graduation party. I just thought, well, I'll just say goodbye to her and thank her for, inviting me. And she said, oh, you should call me. We should get together this summer. And so that I took that as a cue, and I jumped on it. And a few months later, we were starting to date.
So this is graduation from college?
From high school. So she
Oh,
graduated in 97. I was in 96. And
oh,
then
I see. Okay.
we knew each other from when I was a junior in high school, and she was a
Gotcha.
sophomore. And then we started dating when she graduated, the year she graduated, the summer after
Oh,
she graduated.
okay. That's a relief, because I took it as that you had to wait till you both graduated college before she finally said this, and I was like, wow, what a long, long game. But now I see it's just a matter of more just a year or two. So
A
that's
couple of years,
yeah,
yeah. It was, but being apart wasn't easy either, because
yeah.
she actually ended up going to school in Scripps in California, and I was in Philadelphia at Penn. And so that was we had a long distance relationship for a few years, and then
Wow.
but it worked out really well. It gave me the at the time, in college, I was at a point where I was very committed to Juliana, and decided, that takes that whole pressure off of thinking about dating and other
Yeah.
things, and just really enjoyed the friends that I had, enjoyed the school, and doing other stuff too. So
Hmm. Did she ever explain that, during that time that, she had canceled on you and whatnot, that
she
she
has
was,
no good excuses. She has no good reason for that. She could have tried over the year. No, she has tried, but there's no real no. It's like getting the it's like when you have like we've been watching America's Got Talent.
uh-huh.
It felt like getting the red buzzer, or the buzz, the,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
no buzzer. I'm kidding.
Got a big old
Uh,
X.
right.
So she never had
No.
any thoughts of like, hey, I really, did enjoy hanging out with you and talking to you. And this, for the reason I gave didn't work out. Like, let me go and reschedule with you. And that thought never crossed her mind.
I will let you ask her that question
I really
when
want to
she's
find
on
this
camera.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, to be honest, I think she was actually in a phase too, where she just, from a life and faith perspective, she just was not ready for a relationship.
Mm.
And, as a dad now looking back, I'd be like, yeah, girl, do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And especially for my daughters, it's like, don't rush into
Yeah.
this thing. Um, and I think that's a very mature stance to take. And she was, faith has been a big part of both of her and my life. And I think just having that, she wanted to, solidify her relationship with God
Yeah.
at that point in life was one of her priorities. So, I give her a lot of credit for that, in all sincerity too.
And a lot of credit to you for the patience that you had. Because to me, if I went through what you did, I'd just be so, heartbroken that I would just want to move on. Like, I don't ever want to see that girl again. I don't want to talk to her. I'm not going to be sending any maple leaves to her.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. You said something else. No.
Yeah.
No, it. But what's funny is that, I mean, now that you mentioned that, I never thought about it this way, but I think that some of the best things in life, that I've seen in my career, and
Mm,
have paid off because of perseverance. And,
mm-hmm.
sometimes, that there's a North Star you're supposed to head towards. And there, just because you're called in that direction doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
And I'll give you an example. We, under Kupu, we about 2019, we finished the build out of a youth center that we had wanted to build out since 2011.
Wow.
And so we got our programs work with young people across the state and other parts of the Pacific now, and mostly engage them in internships and crew-based, team-based work service as well. In conservation, it was our start. And we were finding that 80% of our youth were coming from low to medium income families, just across the board. And for a certain demographic of our programs, what was an inhibitor to moving into careers or work was a lack of diploma. So in 2011, we decided we needed to create a diploma program, and we were looking for a space of our own. And so we worked with HCDA and found a space in Kewalo Basin, and it was really bad. It was called the Crack Shack as a nickname, and there was like drugs and tents and tarps tied up all around the end. Really dark, 10,000-foot warehouse that was used for the aqua fishing industry, but it hadn't been used for about 20 years, and it was just being used for storage, and I guess to house all kinds of illicit activities. So we took it over. We took out all kinds of trash, about two to four dumpsters full of trash in that area, and started running our programs there for young people. And I was surprised that we got anyone to come there because it was so scary at first. But over time, it improved, and we were getting young people coming in that had dropped out of school. We'd feed them. We had like a propane camping grill and a donated Kenmore refrigerator from someone's house, and we prep our food for the kids that way. And they'd get work training, getting to go out in the field and do conservation work and cultural work, and then they would also get some GED type of training as well too. And we had desired to make it a better space, and then also make it a space that we can bring the community together around as a multi-purpose kind of place. So 2014, we got a letter of intent from the state to say, hey, we're going to support you in building this facility and giving you a 35-year lease at $1 a year.
Wow.
And so we started using that to fundraise. But then at that time, the governors changed, and the administration and the boards changed, and that the board at the time started pulling back on what the previous administration's commitments were. At that time, Howard Hughes had started developing a lot in the Kaka'ako area. So there was a lot of anti-development sentiment. And so I think that the board had to take the time to look at, what these projects were. Are they legitimate? Are they just, projects from the past administration that wouldn't be congruent with where they were wanting to go?
Mm-hmm.
And so we suddenly found ourselves, we had raised a little bit of funds. We had, looked at building this place out, and then we found ourselves kind of in the, we're probably not going to go forward category. There's other projects that were good projects, like a preschool and other things that were committed to, that ended up losing their letters of intent. And so, anyways, it took a lot of work, a lot of conversations, a lot of perseverance. And from 2014 till 2017 or 2017, we were kind of in limbo and had to fight an uphill battle. But finally, we worked with HCDA and we were able to get a lease for the facility. And I think that it was really great. Their team started to see the possibilities. There's some really great staff there that helped us, work on their side, and then we were able to also work with their board and figure it all out. And so it led to some really nice outcomes. And then we raised about $6.5 million after that. And that was another feat too. We were so grateful for, Rich Wacker was the chair of our campaign, from the former CEO at ASB. And we had some really great, all-star guys like Micah Kane from HCF, and Lance Wilhelm from Kamehameha Schools, or he's a trustee. And then we had, some other folks that Meredith Ching, and Alan Oshima from HICO, former president of HICO. They all came to rally to the support of this pretty much unknown nonprofit that had a vision to make Hawaii better. And they came about, and we raised the funds, and I'm so grateful to them and to all those that supported us in those years. So today we have a really amazing center built. It's housing programming, and we've put a ton of kids through getting their diplomas. During the daytime, we have a school that has a waiting list of about 50 individuals to get in. There's a 100% dropout rate, but we're seeing a 90% retention rate.
Wow.
So just the DOE has just signed a contract with us to become an alternative learning center. So where they're going to partner with us and provide the teachers to help us expand and whittle down our waiting list to make it smaller. The young people get to work outside as well as go to school. And then we also created a culinary program. So as I mentioned, we were feeding the kids, and that was one of our biggest ways to attract them. But now we have a full culinary program, and the culinary program is headed up by some really wonderful chefs. Chef Eddie Mafnas is our executive chef, and he's done private chef work for like Beyonce and Jay-Z and President Obama, and he trains them up, and they actually run it as a social enterprise. So we have events that are booked out there. We're actually booked out to the end of the year.
Oh, incredible.
And even during COVID, they provided 100,000 meals to the community, to just people in need, especially in the early time of COVID. And we've grown a food truck. American Savings Bank asked, hey, could you guys work with us and provide some food options for our new campus in Chinatown? So we have a 24-foot food truck there, and it employs more young people, gets them, some of them are managers now that came through our programs. And then the other young people, if they're not interested in culinary, they can go off and work in our other conservation programs. So we're probably the first alternative learning center program with the DOE that actually gives a paid option to young persons. Wow. So they can both learn at their own pace, and then also get a full diploma and get paid while they're in our programs.
Seeing where you are now, how did it get to this point? Where did it all start? How did you come up with the seed that ended up resulting in this gigantic garden of opportunities?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely standing on the shoulders of so many people that have come before us. I mean, like I mentioned, my grandparents and family, and my parents and aunts and uncles that have really invested into me. I think there's been a lot of mentors along the way. Like Uncle Neil Hannes from Kamehameha Schools, they believed in us early on in 2003 and invested funding. Mike Wilson, who's now Supreme Court Justice and who's also on our board now, he was chairman of DLNR, and he thought he there's two things that he did for us. One was that he created a youth conservation corps program on DLNR, which I was a part of, and I grew a love for conservation there. And then later on in life, he was just always been a cheerleader and an encourager for us to try things and go for it and to build up Kupu to make it happen. And so there's been people like that along the way that have just modeled in their own life as well as encouraged me as well. I think that there was a very formative memory that I have in starting this, because we started it from scratch, and we probably had about $3,000 when we started. We were in my parents' house, where I'm actually ironically talking to you from today. So I guess I didn't go too far.
It all goes full circle.
Everything goes full circle. But to put it in perspective, like last year we had about a little under 700 people that were enrolled or on payroll in our programs through the year.
Wow.
And that was, throughout the state and in other parts of the Pacific. And some of those are seasonal or part-time, but, to come from, we had $3,000 and ourselves doing the work by ourselves, that, there was a lot of serendipitous blessings, people, opportunities that came about that we couldn't have even imagined. So we're very grateful that God has put those things in front of us. And one of the formative memories that I had, not knowing all of the things that would come later on, sometimes you have to take a step of faith and take some risks.
Right.
But I was finishing up at Wharton at Penn, and I studied entrepreneurship and environmental management, and there was not a focus that really fit what I wanted to do. Now there's like social entrepreneurship and all these other really cool things you can focus on at Wharton, but at that time I had to take two things, just put them together. And I remember finishing, and I was trying to decide what I was going to do, and I was talking to a professor in entrepreneurship about it, who I really respected. His name was Miles Bass. And Miles was a really great guy. He was a man of faith too. He was Jewish, and so I could talk to him at all different levels. But he was also a very successful entrepreneur. He also helped to mentor other entrepreneurs. That basketball brand is called And One.
Yeah,
those were some of his students that came out of the program. So I was talking to Miles, and I said, Miles, I'm trying to figure out, Professor Bass, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to go after I finish up with school. And, I've been offered some offers in New York and San Francisco. And I was thinking about going home and starting this thing up. And then I was even thinking like, maybe I want to go to seminary or something like that, to something totally different. And so I remember in talking with him, he shared some really neat perspective. He said, well, you can go the career route. And he said, there's nothing wrong with that. But, if you're concerned about risk, I think there's more risk going in that route. And I asked him, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, you can go that route, but there's the risk that you're in a career and you're always going to be on a ladder, especially in the corporate world, where someone's going to be trying to protect their position. And no matter how good you do, they're always going to most times hold you down. And he said, the secondly is that, if you were called to do something in this world and you don't do it, there's more risk that the world and you are going to miss out if you don't do it.
Wow.
And so that hit home. He said, seminary, well, I get that. I see that, being of faith, I understand that, but I don't think that you're going to be as good a pastor as you could be a business person. And I was like, okay, thanks for that. At least you're honest. He says, the reality is, if you can go out there and make a profit, go and do something good with that profit in the world around us. I mean, it doesn't have to be confined to the church to be able to do good in the world. We need, in fact, more people to go out, make a profit, and do good. And I think also Miles was ahead of his time too. And he said, look, and why can't you also do good while making a profit in our world? And, and so and that led me back to looking at coming to home. And so after, a lot of prayer and thought about it, it's like, I felt a responsibility to come back. I think that we've always been hearing about the brain drain for Hawaii. And I'm so glad, there's people like yourself that are here doing what they're doing and investing into Hawaii, because I think it's not just a great place to live, but it really takes an intentionality to want to invest into this place if we're going to see it change.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I started to feel this calling, this responsibility that I got to invest into Hawaii. I mean, there's so much that I've been invested into growing up here that I didn't want that to die, that the spirit of aloha that I felt growing up here, the spirit of community, and, focusing on more than just success for success's sake, but there's a corporate success that occurs, I feel, in Hawaii that I wanted to be a part of keeping alive. And I remember being in Philadelphia, where it's called the city of brotherly love, but you just didn't feel that. I mean, I saw my first drive-by shooting when I was in Philadelphia as a freshman. Saw all these bars on the buildings and homes, and trash everywhere. Homeless folks, in the middle of the winter, sleeping on the subways. And I was like, gosh, I don't want our state to be called the Aloha State. And me and 20 years later it not feel anything like that.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like that voice inside saying, well, what are you going to do about it? And so that was a big part of what made me want to come back and start up something different. And like I said, we didn't know what was going to be, all the things that were going to happen. Sometimes you just have to take a step of faith. Sometimes you're just assigned one thing at a time, and you just got to take that step, and soon, step after step, it adds up to something that has been pretty remarkable.
What was it that drew you to wanting to create opportunities and programs to help the youth in our community specifically, that the age group? Did it relate to you being an only child, or some kind of experiences that you went through growing up? Like what drew you to wanting to make that your calling?
As an only child, I didn't have friends, so I needed to create a program to create more friends for myself. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, sounds about right. No. I only joke that because I also am an only child. So,
our pain.
Yeah,
So bad.
I have so many friends that I created in my mind.
Yeah, that's right. This may never get aired, but at least we're talking to each other. So
yeah.
That's good. We started actually our first company, which is Pono Pacific, as a conservation services company, and providing natural resource management options for the state, federal, and other landowners. And then it actually kind of came to us that the program that I was in the 90s that Mike Wilson had started had lost funding, and it regained some funding in 2001. And we were asked by the state, would you guys be interested in doing this contract to run a youth program? And so we said, yeah, we'd be interested. So they put it out for bid, and we got it. And we ended up running a small youth program. I think the budget was like $30,000 for the whole summer, and we had 16 kids in the program. And so it was a real success. It was on Kauai for the first year, and then every year it just kept on growing, and we kept on bringing in grants and funders, and so it went from being a project under Pono Pacific to this really cool program, and it grew to a point where we said, you know what, Pono Pacific has a desire to continue to manage and steward conservation lands and provide professional conservation services. But this is more, we were seeing happening was now kids getting interested in this career. And up until that point, most of the internships and early jobs were being filled by people from outside of Hawaii. And I think what we found, it wasn't that there was a lack of interest from local kids, but there was a lack of pathway. Whereas you think about like Colorado, Washington, California, they have all these really great career pathways to get into natural resources or related fields. Whereas we didn't have that as much. And the kids didn't know how to get into them in the colleges for the first place. But it was really neat because we were seeing like young people, who had hunted, fished, surfed, been outdoors all their life. And then they found out they could get a career in this and, and get a job, get a federal job that paid well. And so that kind of really made us reframe it and realize that we were providing a really important service to our community. And if we did this well, we could do more for conservation to get, people engaged and invested than we could by pulling weeds on an acre of land every day. So that's when we decided to create a separate nonprofit, and that started brewing in our heads around 2005, and then Kupu came about officially in 2007. And so that's kind of where it came about. And it's, to me, we get to do some of the most important work that our state has to offer. From a economic perspective, if I put my economic hat on, I feel like when you take care of our natural resources, it's sustaining life here. And there's nothing more important than that to create a vibrant economy and build economy off of is the ability to allow life to sustain and grow in a thriving type of way. And we didn't know it back then, but all the work that's been done around renewable energy, we're seeing what's happening with like our water systems now, how important that is to protect and preserve, and food as well is such an important area. Those are all areas that are integrated to that our lands should be activated for. And then the other side of what we get to do is unlock the next generation of leaders. And our goal is to help them to develop careers and educational pathways, but I think the first and foremost goal is to develop people who care about the community and the people around them. And if we can do that by taking them out into a forest and them having to care for an ecosystem that can't protect itself from some of the inputs that we've put into it, then they start to develop that sense of compassion and desire to give back. And even if they go off to become another career, teacher, or fireman or doctor, they can take those sentiments in with them wherever they go and make a difference. So those are things that are I feel like are some of the most important things we get to offer to our community.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you have countless memories or stories that have come about through all these years of work that you've done. But is there anything that kind of that is one of those like landmark memories for you, maybe early on, where it had to do with something that maybe one of the students that came through and a story that really helped make you feel like this is why we're doing what we're doing, this is why we were put in this position, and anything that kind of stood out to you that you fall back to?
Gosh, there is a lot of them. I'm gonna just tell a few quick ones if that's okay.
Of course.
I was on Kauai last week, and some from our early programs we went to visit one of our sites. So the way we work is that we one of the ways our programs work, we'll place young adults at different nonprofit and government and other entities that are doing conservation, ag, or sustainability type of work. And one of our sites that receives support is a nonprofit over in Kauai. It's a fish pond. And what's really cool is that the guy leading it up is one of our alumni from 2000 and I want to say 4.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our earlier programs. And now he's back on Kauai, his home island. And he's telling us about this other guy who now has his own company and nonprofit, two things. And he's an alumni as well too. And then we went off and visited with DLNR, the DOFA, Division of Forestry and Wildlife Office. And I want to say like 50 or 60% of the managers there are alumni of our program, and they have now Kupu interns. And so it's really cool when you're getting to see these things come full circle, when, some of these young people you knew as just, a tiny little teenager and, trying to figure out what's what in life and which way is up. And now to see them being managers and talking about how they want to invest in the next generation, how we can make our program better, mentor the next generation better through ideas they have and how they want to run their internships. That to me is like, whoa, that's really awesome. I mean, to take it from a place where traditionally, as an example, some government jobs can be very, very just maintenance focused and just getting the the act of clearing or doing the work that they need to do, getting that done.
Mm-hmm.
And to evolve that into a place where you have now these young leaders who want to make it a place of mentorship where people are caring and concerned about the deeper issues. They want the next generation to get involved. That's really a cool evolution that I've seen.
Yeah. Wow. And I love that there's a difference between having someone be able to make a connection with their spirit, their soul, and their heart to what they do versus training them to have a job and just doing an action, like having that added spiritual connection and personal connection. And that gives people meaning to what they do.
It
right?
does. It really does. And I'll tell you one more story. One is on our culinary side, and it was really cool because we had a young man named Dada, and data was in our programs, I think starting in 2014 or 2015, so a little while ago. But he had dropped out of school, and then he came in to our programs and got his diploma. But what was so cool is that in that span of time, he went off and did some other work elsewhere, but he was able to come back into our programs. He started in our culinary program when it first started, and this young man had made mistakes in life, but what was so cool was that he's came back, went through our programs, and now he's able to afford his own home. He has a 2 or 3 year old little daughter as well too, which he takes care of, and he's now a manager within our organization.
Wow.
And so it's to me, to see that the power that comes with a community that surrounded him, people that believed in him and gave him the opportunities, really shows that there's so much potential, and too often we write people off because of a mistake or whatever might have happened, but I think that the power of the programs show that how much is yet to be written for each person.
And I love that what you're providing is obviously the system that they were in wasn't conducive to what they were passionate about, their style of learning, what connected and resonated with them as far as like traditional schooling and whatnot. But to be able to provide them with something like this, where they can not only find a connection, but just thrive in, and it just goes to show that sometimes we don't have to cram people into these boxes, right?
Yep.
And I love what you're doing.
Thank you. And I think about going back to the beginning of our conversation about Punahou. I think that was a really rich blessing that we had, but I also know that that's not achievable for everyone, and but at the same time too, I feel like part of the hope and the opportunity is to take some of the better parts of what we gained, and a sense of responsibility, leadership in the community, and some of the educational benefits, and find ways that we can provide that for others as well. And while we're by far anything from a Punahou, I feel like what's really cool is that we're trying to provide a different model, like you mentioned, that's going to fit people where they're at and make a difference, and help them to want to love learning, wanting them to see the application, and feel encouraged in life. And I think those are, if we can do that, then we've done something meaningful.
And I really just love kind of like your origin story of this coming from a place of where you're at in Philadelphia, and seeing, like, it just kind of sends chills down my spine as to how you described, here's a place with the moniker, the city of brotherly love, and you don't feel any love there. And how scary of a thought that could be, that, the Aloha State has no aloha, and for you to be around this community of people who want so desperately to not only make sure that we don't lose the aloha, but to infuse more than we've ever had, so that's that all of these individuals can not only feel that, but pass it on to future generations and grow.
No, I mean, I think the big buzzword in the 90s was sustainability, and I know it's carried on today, but to me, what I felt like from an environmental standpoint, and then also from what you're talking about from a sense of that aloha barometer standpoint too, is that I want us to be on the offensive, and not just sustain the status quo where we're at now, and in hopes that we don't lose the rest of it, but rather us build it up so that we can be more than where we are now, and that we can, my hope is that it can overflow to the point where we're not infecting in a bad way, but we're influencing. Yeah, that's a better word. Influencing the world, with the way we relate to one another, and how we drive our economy even. I mean, my
Mm.
hope is that, as we build out some of these industries around, that are, the green jobs areas, from ag to conservation to energy and other areas, that, and as we create programs like ours that can use them as vehicles to transform and lift people up and give them opportunities, that hopefully it creates a little bit of a model that other communities, when they see, it's like, oh wow, that's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And what's driving all of this is a genuine care for one another.
Yeah.
There's a care for our community, and yeah, there's a profitability, and there's a thing, but look at how that's being used. Look at how that's being done. And the first goal is not just to make a profit, but that's an outcome of doing what's right in our community and the world around us.
Yeah, I love that this model is void of this sense or feeling of greed. That
Mm-hmm.
profitability is a means to creating more opportunity versus, how can, we help ourselves. It's more of a position of how can we help others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have no problem. I mean, I hope that there's tons of people that end up doing well financially and, can afford living here and get,
Mm-hmm.
Get ahead in life. And that's awesome. But when it becomes our first focus, then I think that's the challenge, is when we realize, because when it becomes your first focus, then any path to get there, is good.
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't matter what corners we cut. But when we realize that we got to root our businesses, our nonprofits, our community, our government in that spirit of aloha, that spirit of character, integrity, and do our best to follow that, and profits come because of those good practices, then that's, I think, a different ethos too.
I'm just curious, especially what we experienced as a state during these last 2.5 years with the pandemic, where our state traditionally relies so much on the travel industry to keep the state going. Hearing the way that what you're seeing with how your model is impacting our state, do you feel, from what you've seen, that it's a realistic possibility and belief that this kind of industry could be an integral tool to having our state rely less on something as fluctuating as tourism, and maybe relying more on these kind of things?
I think the goal is to establish an additional leg to our economy, but I think it's going to take time. And I think that sometimes we get into the mentality of taking one side or another on certain things. And whereas I think that there's probably sometimes, more importantly, is to find a way to reach across the aisles and find ways that we can find complementary ways that we can work together to achieve common outcomes. And so with tourism, I think that there's a huge demand and growing demand in our world for more authentic experiences, more culturally and environmentally sound things that people want to learn about. And I think we're seeing that reflected in HTA's some of their current positions on tourism and wanting to really encourage more authentic and responsible tourism. So that being said, I mean, I think that with those opportunities, we can create really neat drivers for experiences, food that's locally grown, and other projects that will feed off of and benefit from tourism, but yet use that as a catalyst to start to develop some of these industries into their own spaces as well too. So Hawaii, like as an example, food wise, we're our Pono Pacific, our other company, is working with Blackstone up at Turtle Bay, and there's a 500-acre farm up there that we're running we help to develop and run called Kuidema Farm, and it is in partnership with Turtle Bay. They've been a great partner, and we're seeing they've put in a lot of resources into the farm to make it successful. It's helping out a lot of the current tenant farmers, building out infrastructure like roads and irrigation and all these other really important things. But what we've also been able to do is build out some of the business infrastructure necessary to help our farms succeed. And so, we're building out a wash pack facility, which is important because farmers need, for food safety purposes, need to have their food clean before it can be sold in a lot of venues. And so without that and the capital it requires to build a facility like this, it becomes inhibitive to get into certain markets.
Right.
And so we've been able to do that with Blackstone, and not only will we be able to sell to the resort, but also be able to sell elsewhere and create a distribution from the farm of local farmers and their products too. So, and then there's this opportunity to also educate both the local community and get them on the farm, as well as people that are visiting at the resort, and it brings in that additional income that makes the farm more financially feasible.
Yeah.
And so I guess, Hawaii's different. We're not going to be, thousands and thousands of acres of corn or wheat or whatever it might be.
Right.
But we need local food. We all know that. And we've seen the challenges when shipping strikes occur, or when docks get overloaded because of COVID and they can't come out here. So, we even get concerned about toilet paper. So much more concern is food, right?
Yeah.
And not only is it the fear factor of it all, but there's the opportunity loss where we can, instead of importing food and exporting our financial resources, we should be supporting our own communities. But yet it's also a matter of creating the infrastructure financially to be able to have that be steady and available as well. So, I think going back to the discussion around tourism, I think that it is an important factor that we can look at, and how do we work with tourism and not against it to create situations in which we can benefit and grow our economy and our community, and these important industries that need to develop, because we have to develop them differently than they would in the mainland.
Yeah, I love that. I'm really excited about the way that you put that and that perspective, and I really I feel so much energy behind hearing what you're doing, what your organization is doing, and I feel so much more enthusiastic about the future, what our community looks like, what our state looks like, and I would love for whatever kind of support and help that you and your organization needs, if there's ways that those listening could, whether they want to get involved or want to learn more, what would be the best way for those who want to get connected with Kupu and your organization?
Yeah, please reach out to us. Our website, kupuhawaii.org. We're also on Facebook and Instagram, and so I could be cool with my kids.
I was going to say, we got to keep your followers going up.
Right. And, there's a lot of ways that, look, I always believe the best thing around is not when it's just a one-way relationship, but when it's a win-win. And there's a lot of ways people can get involved with us that hopefully will be a win, from programs for a young person. You can even get college credits and get paid while you're going to involved in our program.
Yeah.
Volunteer opportunities, and simple things like coming to our food truck, eating a meal there, or booking an event at our space. Those are things that we do and we need to do, but if you can do it in a way that is helping our community to grow, and it doesn't have to just be with Kupu. There's a lot of great other nonprofits to do that with, but those are just very simple examples of how we can do everyday life and see that upward momentum occur at the same time.
Well, I so glad that we had this time to get together and hang out. And I knew you and your organization and your family were doing some amazing things in our community, but to kind of hear the heart and the backstory of what you've gone through and how the journey has been really special. And I really, really appreciate you taking time to share those stories with us and to open up. And I also want to say on behalf of, our community, like, thank you to you and your whole entire team and family for putting so much care and thought into what we call home and making our place a better place. It really, I hope you get as much of that appreciation because that you could possibly receive, because we desperately need people like yourself to make our home better and to keep it as special as it is. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Nolan. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for doing this. And I really appreciate you reaching out and giving me the opportunity to share our story. And to the, maybe the one or two listeners that are still here and after I hopefully didn't put too many of you to sleep, please continue to come back and listen to Nolan, because it's so great that he's sharing these local stories of success and impact and meaning for our community. So thank you, Nolan.
Well, they'll have to come back, because I do need to have your wife on, because we need to get to the other side of that story. And
remind me when that airs, and I'll make sure to take a trip in case I get in trouble. Yeah. Actually, remind me when this one airs so I can make sure.
You better be gone for this one. Yeah. No, but I like, her story just sounds absolutely fascinating, and she's such a wonderful person from when I've hung out with her. So I would really love it. I know she's so busy, but if you could put in the word and maybe plant that seed, I would love to have her on here. And not just to hear about the love story, but I think she's just a fascinating person, and I would love to hear her story.
You. Yeah. You'd have fun with her. Yeah.
Well, John, thank you so much. It's been a really an awesome time hanging out with you, and thank you for all you do, and thanks for giving us your time here today.
Thank you, Nolan. You take care.
Thank you so much again to John Leong for hanging out with us on this week's episode of the podcast. After we finished up, I shared with him, and I totally mean it. I just really loved talking to him and hearing all of his stories and experiences and perspectives. And I could have talked to him for hours and hours more, but I know he's got a lot of work to do. And I mean, they're still unpacking at their house, and he's got 4 kids. So I did not want to take any more of his time, but I really am so grateful to John for giving us that time. And I really appreciate him hanging out with us on our podcast here. And of course, I really appreciate you for hanging out with us and joining us on another episode. And as we continue on with some great guests and great conversations, I'm just eternally grateful and appreciative for you continuing to support the podcast and giving me this opportunity to not only share the people that I know with you, but also meet new people as well through the podcast. So much appreciation to you. And I hope you join us next week, as we're going to have another great episode of Hanging Out with Nolan Hong.